Hello, all. I'm Brad Harris, and I just want to welcome you very personally from me to you, from a wonderful co host to you. Welcome to the Movie Rares podcast. You may be seeing their smiling, wonderful faces already if you are watching us live on YouTube Live. But let me introduce you to my wonderful cohorts. Jim Pugliafco is here. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Brad, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is with us as well, coming to us live on location in a remote bunker somewhere in eastern Syria. It's Will Lindis.
Hey, listeners. I'm not that remote. I'm hanging out in San Antonio right now. I'm in my hotel right now. So hopefully the Wi-Fi and the audio and everything holds up. So far, so good. But if I sound like crap later on, just blame the internet gods.
It's probably some guy in room 208 downloading massive amounts of porn on the hotel Wi-Fi, Will, if that happens.
You know, what's funny is I'm that guy in room 208. Now, what's funny is we tested oh, let's do a quick test to make sure everything's good to go. But I didn't quite think about at the time, oh yeah, later in the night is when people up their porn downloads. So, the quality may degrade as the show goes on. We'll have to see.
Well, if it does degrade too much and it starts to sound really bad or whatever, I can always just go full robot voice on your voice when I do the show and make you sound like Donald Duck or anybody.
I love that. Domo arigato, yeah. Mr. Jimbato.
All right, we'll do
it. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this week's show. We are going to be doing something we've not done for 4 weeks, you guys, and that's movie news. Can you believe that? We've been doing double features in our top 10 show, and movie news, there just hasn't been a lot of room for you in our lives lately. But guess what? Tonight, we're calling you back up like a drunk call at 3 a.m. because we're horny and want to...
Horny for movie news.
Yeah. We're horny for movie news.
Yeah.
That should be a hashtag horny for news. We're also going to be reviewing the new M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movie Split, starring James McAvoy. So it will be interesting to have a discussion about this movie, I feel. Will, I just have to ask you, I know we're going to do movie news here in a bit, but are you an M. Night Shyamalan fan typically?
I think that I would probably be considered a bit of an M. Night Shyamalan apologist in that, okay, so full disclosure, he's put out some really shitty movies, and I think that it would be lying to say that, The Last Airbender or The Happening or even Lady in the Water were actually good movies. I can't defend those movies. But he had a couple of movies straight out of the gate, The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, which I consider to be legitimately amazing films that still hold up. You can rewatch those right now, and they still rock. And even some of his intermediate films, like Signs, and I even like The Village. Those still worked for me. So he's not always perfect, but he is someone who I'm always interested in seeing from, because I always hope that he'll recapture that early spark that I love so much. What about you, Brad? Are you Shyamalan Ding Dong fan?
For me, Sixth Sense and Unbreakable were the perfect introduction to M. Night Shyamalan, and then pretty much everything after that, except for, what was that one last year? Was it The Visit?
The Visit.
I loved The Visit. I fucking love that movie. It was great. But aside from that, everything in the middle, not so much. So that's kind of me. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think every director, well, let's put it this way. Most directors have the films that really wow us and kind of put them on the map. And then they have some other films that, maybe a lot of people haven't heard of, or maybe they not so great or not as well critically received or box office success. So M. Night Shyamalan unfortunately has some very notable missteps, I guess, in movies. And you guys mentioned them, right? The Last Airbender, Lady in the Water, The Happening, which I saw in theaters. But yeah, I think for the most part, I think, his filmography has got some really great stuff in it. I mean, The Sixth Sense was a landmark film. I mean, it kind of put the movie twist, on the map after, Hitchcock, whatever, kind of blazed the trail. But he put a whole new twist on the twist, and whenever somebody thinks of movie twists, at least in modern day, they think of M. Night Shyamalan and maybe Hitchcock. So that was a great movie. I like The Village also. Unbreakable's a good movie. And The Visit last year, obviously, I think he's back on an upswing. So, but we'll see. I mean, missteps here and there, I'm okay with. I don't like, even my favorite directors have films that I don't really resonate with. So
it's true.
Yeah, I generally like his films.
All right. Well, this should be an interesting discussion then. Has M. Night Shyamalan returned to form in Will and I's eyes, or has he continued maybe this forward momentum that Jim mentioned? I think we're going to have some good conversation to answer that question, but not quite yet. Before we do that, we've got some great movie news to share with you guys. So we're going to unpack that first. But if you are listening live on YouTube Live, we would love to hear your thoughts on M. Night Shyamalan's movies from the last few years. Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Did that influence whether or not you saw this movie? Feel free to leave us a comment on YouTube or Facebook if you're seeing this post. And when we get to our review of Split a little later on, we may give you a shout out on air. So we'll give you a little lead time for that. Because, guys, we've got like 9 people hanging out with us right now, which is interesting given that, I don't know, is Split one of those movies that has like a huge buzz?
I think
I don't know that Split necessarily does, but M. Night Shyamalan, he's one of those guys that, I mean, let's face it, like, half of the time, when you're listening to like movie news or a movie review, it's because like, oh, I want to find out like if this movie's gonna be good. Should I spend my money on it? But there is a big part of it about like, especially with kind of a controversial director, just like, oh man, did this guy drop another turd? Like, I mean, think about like how many hits like websites that do like the review of like Jim and the Holograms, like whatever controversial movie is. So, hey, listeners, glad to have you with us. Hope that you're with us for a good movie time. Hopefully, we're not going to shit on this movie too much.
Well, stay with us as we seek to unpack whether or not M. Night Shyamalan shit his pants with Split. Before that, though, let's get into a little bit of movie news. I always hear the sound effects in my head. It's just how my brain works, I guess.
Even after all these years.
I know. 4 years later. Do we need new sound effects, guys? Is it time to like revamp our sound effect library?
I don't know. We can add
thinking about that today.
Not for news. News is like, I don't know. I'm kind of attached to it.
I'm going to work on a spoiler one. That's what I'm going to work on.
Oh, that's a good idea. Sure.
Yeah, all right. That's a good one. I'm down for that.
We still don't have a theme song for us, so we kind of rely on.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm thinking about all the guests we've had over the years who've like been like, oh man, I should totally do a theme song for the Movie Bears podcast. Like Nakia was like, I'll do a theme song for you guys. And Magic Mike Lovins is like, I'll totally do like a Steel Dragon death metal theme song for you guys. Like we should have a cadre of theme songs at this point that we can cycle through. And yet we don't. So if you're a musician and you'd like to maybe help us out with a super cool theme song that would get you exposure and your name called out on the episode every week, hit us up. Send me a message at brad@moviebearspodcast.com and we'll talk about that because that could be fun for sure. In any event, movie news. Will, why don't you kick us off? What have you got this week?
All right. I've got the news story that keeps on giving this week, actually. So last week it broke via TMZ. Take that for what it's worth. That the new movie that's coming out, like next week, A Dog's Purpose, which is the movie about we've talked about it here on the show. We've seen the trailer. We've cried about it together, about the dog who's like reincarnated through this man's life. There's this video clip of what appears to be some mistreatment of the dog. It first looks as though the dog is being forced into this like raging current that he doesn't want to get in. Video cuts, then it shows like the dog like in the water, and he submerges and goes underwater. So at first, it looks really, really, really damning. And you have groups like PETA and a lot of people online who are saying, hey, I'm not going to watch this movie, or you should not watch this movie because of this. Now, it's since come out that, of course, like the shot is edited. Like there's 2 shots that are, back to back that make it look as though like, the dog was shoved into the water. We don't actually see that happening. What's interesting though is I'm reading a bunch of different things from different people who worked on the film, and all of them are coming at it from a slightly different angle. Some of the writers are saying like, hey, there's no problem here because we've reviewed the footage and we had people on standby and yada, yada, yada. One of the producers of the film said, hey, there's a lot that you're not seeing to this story, but there were some things that were legitimately wrong here. We at the last minute changed where we were going to put the dog in the water because he'd been trained to go in at a specific spot. We changed it at the last minute. That's why he panicked. And then we should have had more safety precautions in place so the dog didn't submerge later on. So, and I think I probably fall in the cautiously pessimistic camp on this, in that I feel like obviously there's the shot is extremely edited. Like there's a cut that just like with any editing in a movie, a cut makes you piece things together and fill in the gaps. We have to do that here, and when we do so in the most damning way possible. But knowing that the producer came out and actually said that there was some things that he would have done different, that he wasn't happy with all of the footage he's reviewed. When the producer says that, and his job is to get people to like come see the movie, like that's that there's a little bit of fire that goes along with that smoke, I think. So I don't know if I'm like in full on like boycott camp or not, but it does sour me a little bit on a movie that I wasn't necessarily expecting to be good, but I was expecting to at least have a good cry while watching. And now I don't know if I can even experience that because I'll just be thinking about the meta narrative. Have you guys heard about this story?
Yeah, I have. And here's the thing: I'm getting a weird echo for some reason.
I'm hearing it too.
Bizarre. Testing?
On you only.
Okay. That was weird. Will, now that you're muted, it went away. Unmute yourself real quick. Testing. I hear a little echo still.
Word.
Now it's gone. Okay. Bizarre. The joys of doing it live, ladies and gentlemen. So, Jim, if you just want to take it back to the end of Will's question. You're old hat at this. You know what to do because you're amazing. So, Will, yeah, I did hear about this controversy. And as someone who cries during that trailer, like every time, it was interesting seeing this trailer after the news story broke. Because when I had seen the trailer the first couple times, I was like, oh, this is so sad. This is so awesome. And then like after seeing it after the news story broke, I'm like, oh, this is so sad. But because you're forcing dogs who are terrified out of their minds to do these stunts and get into water. And so it was a very different experience watching the trailer even after the news story broke. I can't even imagine watching this movie now. Because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what I'm going to be thinking about. Like every time the animal looks scared or they have it doing some crazy jump or something, like in the back of my mind, that's going to be festering there. So I think it would be hard for me. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, in these movies, with animals doing stunts, I mean, it's nothing new for animals to do stunts. And most stunts in these movies are pretty benign. I mean, it's a dog jumping over a river or whatever, and these dogs are trained to do that, and they actually who knows, I don't know if they actually enjoy doing it, but they're trained to do it. It doesn't seem to cause them harm or pain or anything like that, so I'm on board with that. But I heard about the description of the video. I haven't brought myself to watch the video because it's one of those things where in your head like, oh man, do I really want to watch a video where it's potential like some animal was harmed or, kind of forced to do something against its will. That might hurt me more than just knowing about it. So I haven't watched it yet. Haven't seen the trailer in the theaters since I heard about the story. I haven't gone online to watch the trailer yet, but God, I mean, I hope there is. And I saw something in the story about that the director didn't quite. He seemed to indicate, or maybe it was the producer you talked about. Well, the director didn't seem to know what was going on because maybe this was like a second unit setup that they did. That this video came from, and the director may not have even been on set because the way he was talking is like he didn't know what actually happened.
Which is fairly common. A lot of times, you have a director who's not there for every single part of a major production. That's exactly why you have second unit direction. So, I mean, I think this one it's a little blown out of proportion in terms, like I've been really diving down the rabbit hole on this one. I think, some of it's been blown out of proportion, but there is a bit of a story here, especially if one of the producers said, it's like, most of this is exaggerated, but there's some that we have to own. For someone to come out and say that already makes me, realize, okay, they're owning it. We should take that seriously.
That raises the flag for sure for me. So I mean, we were probably on the fence about seeing this movie in the first place. So I don't know how this is gonna, affect us from seeing this movie.
Well,
from the moment we first saw the trailer, I was like, oh God, really? We're gonna watch this?
And I think a lot of people are in that exact same boat. Like I would be really interested in seeing and I will never know alternate reality, like how much money this movie would have made without this new story breaking. But I wish there was some way that I could compare those numbers, because this has got to be a severe blow to its opening weekend.
Oh, for sure. Well, very sad story indeed. But guys, I've got something that is not sad. Are you ready?
Who is it? Ice cream?
It's not ice cream, but it is something you'd probably want to thoroughly lick up and down. And that is, we just got this awesome picture from longtime friend of the show, Paul Alderete, also in San Antonio, right, Will?
That's right. I'm in Paul's neck of the woods right now.
Maybe you can go lick him up and down after the show. I don't know. But hey, for those of you who are listening through iTunes or Stitcher Radio, you are missing out on the supreme handsomeness of Paul right now. You don't get to see it. So, Jim, let's do this. For our listeners who are not able to see Paul, how would you describe Paul in this picture? Like pretend they're blind, our listeners, and you are crafting an image in their heads.
So this is almost like a selfie, except Paul, excuse me, the image on my screen is fairly small. Paul is looking as handsome as usual in his button-down gingham pattern shirt, blue and white, with, unfortunately, he's got a white T-shirt on under it. I think it'd be a little hotter without that T-shirt. I agree. But very handsome, and he's drinking from a cup with a straw, something in his hand, and I can't tell exactly what restaurant it's from. He's got his mouth around that straw, sucking for all it's worth. And
looks like Bill Miller Barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh, barbecue. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Well, Jim, great description. Maybe Paul will take his shirt off and send us another picture. Who knows?
We'll see. Yeah.
But hey, Paul, glad to hear from you.
Hi, Paul.
And, I hope we'll see you in a couple months when Jim and I are there for South by Southwest. But Will, he's in your backyard like all the time. So lucky.
Yay.
All right. Paul just said, good Lord. And he's blushing, apparently.
Good Lord.
So it's like blushing all around.
Oh, goodness. All right, Jim, what have you got from movie news this week?
I've got some movie news. Not anything too big, but kind of in my world or sphere of interest. Godzilla stuff kind of catches my eye. So this is regarding the next American Godzilla movie. Let's just for now call it Godzilla 2. In May last year, it was announced that the director of the first one, Gareth Edwards, was not going to be directing the sequel to the Godzilla movie. Of course, we know that he went on to direct the most recent Star Wars anthology movie, Rogue One. So he was busy with that, but I don't know what he's actually going to be doing next, but it's not going to be Godzilla 2. The rumored title of the next Godzilla movie is going to be called Godzilla King of Monsters, which I love the title of that. And it's also been announced as of today officially that they found a director to replace Gareth Edwards. His name is Mike Dougherty. He was the filmmaker who gave us the anthology film Trick or Treat, if you ever saw that one, the Halloween kind of anthology movie from, God, it's got to be 6 or 7 years or more ago now. And also more recently, the Krampus movie, which was a couple of Christmases ago, kind of a Christmas horror comedy movie, which I believe we reviewed on the show. So Mike Dougherty is going to be directing that movie. He's been working on the movie, writing it, the Godzilla movie, and they decided, hey, this guy's doing such a great job in writing, we're going to give him the director reins. So that's what we're going to get. Godzilla 2 isn't coming out till like March of 2019. So yeah, it's going to be a while. They're building this monster verse. Legendary Studios, that is the studio behind this. The next movie they've got coming out, though, is coming out this March, called Kong Skull Island. You've probably seen, maybe you've seen trailers for this. So we got that this March, and then we got to wait like 2 years for the second Godzilla movie, and then there's a big crossover movie with Godzilla versus King Kong that is in May of 2020, which you don't even have to get me started what I think about this whole MonsterVerse, Godzilla versus Kong thing. You can give me standalone Godzilla movies all day. The Godzilla versus King Kong thing, I don't know. I think this comes from kind of, they're building this MonsterVerse, and we have this Marvel universe where it's always got to be this good guy against this bad guy, or this one big thing against this other big thing. It's kind of this paradigm we've fallen into for blockbuster movies. And I think it's kind of a shame that we've got to, promote this movie like this. But anyway, I expect to hear more news probably toward the end of this year. When San Diego Comic-Con rolls around, we'll probably hear more about the next Godzilla movie. And by then, of course, we'll have the results for how Kong Skull Island is done, how Legendary feels about the rest of its MonsterVerse by then. Any thoughts from you guys? I don't know if you've heard any of this.
Gosh, I'm excited for the next Godzilla movie here in the United States. But wasn't it 2017 at one point? Then it was 18, then it was 19. I'm just wondering if it's, going to stay on a release date, and B, I'm wondering now at this point how they're going to put Kong and Godzilla in the movie together, because aren't King Kong and Godzilla usually vastly different sizes? I know in the old movie there was some plot reason that Kong grew like 50,000 times his normal size or something, but I don't know. I'm sure.
Yeah, everything's gotten bigger. Everything from fast food, soft drinks to monsters in movies. Neither King Kong nor Godzilla were as big as these new movies are. They've just constantly grown over time. Even the Toho Godzilla movie was, that sucker true. Was huge.
There's some interesting charts, and I'm sure we've all seen them plenty of times, where it shows the different scales of the different Godzillas and the movie monsters over time. And hyperbole aside, yeah, they are growing. Every movie we're seeing them get a little bigger, a little more massive. Yeah. So yeah, maybe this is an opportunity, Brad, to your point, for them to rescale one or the other to get them in about the same tier, so that it's not just like Godzilla just squishing King Kong and moving on, or
right,
something like that.
Right, yeah, we'll see.
They'll be scaling King Kong up from what I've seen in the trailers. The scale of that creature is much larger than I think we've seen before. But
okay.
Anyway, we've got a director. I don't know how excited I am. I'm excited for any Godzilla movie. I hope this guy gives us a fantastic movie. That's all I really want. I wasn't too pleased with Krampus, and Trick or Treat was kind of fun for a Halloween kind of horror anthology movie. But this is a big jump from movies like Trick or Treat and Krampus to taking on the Legendary Studios MonsterVerse. So good luck to Legendary.
We shall see. All right. For me this week, big news coming out of the Star Wars camp. The next movie, Star Wars Episode 8, now officially has a title, and we're looking at Star Wars The Last Jedi. So spoilers for Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. But, at the end, Rey finds Luke. Is she his daughter? Is she Obi-Wan's granddaughter? Is she the lost twin sister of Ben Solo? We don't fucking know. But it looks like the second movie is totally going to be The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, the sequence where she learns to be a Jedi from the last surviving alive Jedi, which would be Luke Skywalker at this point. My question is, given that it's called The Last Jedi, do you think more focus is going to be on Rey or on Luke? And to go.
It could be on both, actually, because Jedi is both singular and plural. We've heard it used both, like when you have one person, that person is a Jedi. But that's a group of Jedi. So maybe The Last Jedi is the two of them, and it's going to be obviously there's going to be lots of other characters, but maybe the core of the story is going to be a two-hander about the mentor and the student. And that's in keeping with one of the major themes of the previous films in the Skywalker chronicle, like all of the different mentorships that follow all the way through the movies. You could also have a death sequence where Luke dies off, passing the reins to Rey, who is the Last Jedi. A lot of opportunities, a lot of possibilities here. I think the title is worded in such a way that it doesn't spoil us on what's going to happen there. And I appreciate that a lot. Like, it's an interesting title, but it's not one that gives away the whole card.
Yeah, I'm with you, Will. I don't think this, it's a cool title. I like the title. It makes me interested in the next movie even more than I was before, but I don't think it tips its hands. It could be anything. God, the internet today, Twitter and Facebook and some of the movie websites were going crazy with, The Last Jedi has to be Luke, and here's why. Or no, it doesn't have to be Luke. It could be Rey, or it could be, it's The Last Jedi, like you said, Will. It's plural. It could be a fucking army of Jedi, right? That's that's a bunch of The Last Jedi. I don't know. I like the title. It doesn't really give much away. We'll see how it shapes up in the movie. That's all.
I think the title is going to be extremely interesting to look at once we've seen the movie, because even something like The Force Awakens, obviously the Force is a thing, and but you couldn't watch that title and really know exactly what that meant, who it pertained to, or how that would impact the story. Same thing with this movie. I think that once we've seen it, I think we'll be able to go back and appreciate the title because of what it's saying in a way that we can't appreciate it now.
Brad, what do you think?
I'm thinking it's probably Jedi plural, and that it's going to be in reference to both Luke and Rey. But I'm also wondering if, I don't know, the whole Carrie Fisher thing throws a big question mark in the air for me. I know she was done with pretty much all of her filming for Episode 8. But I'm just wondering about her character, in the books, which are non-canon now, but take it for what you will, she became a Jedi Knight, and it was her and Luke, and then new Jedi Knights came along that Luke taught. But so I'm kind of wondering if in the movie verse, Leia is going to be pulled into that at all. Are there any surviving Jedi from the group that Luke tried to bring up that Ben Solo supposedly killed? Any survivors? I don't know, but I'm thinking it's definitely more of a torch passing movie. So I think we're going to get a new generation of Jedi, even if it's just Rey. My fear is, though, Two things. One, obviously, spoiler alert for The Force Awakens, but Han Solo, right? Gone, first movie. So second movie, if you kill Luke off and Carrie Fisher's dead, which means no more Princess Leia, oh God, that's heavy. Because like, are they going to engineer a death for Leia in between episode 8 and 9? Is there going to be something in the movie this time around? She dies at the end. Does she, I don't know, man. So I think it would be pretty hard to lose Luke Skywalker and, Leia via Carrie Fisher's death, right, in the same movie.
And it might also be a little cheap too. I mean, I think when you handle, from a script perspective, when you handle the death of a major character, like it carries a lot of weight to it, and it's designed to make us feel something. It's designed to make us feel lost for that character. It's designed to make us feel momentum. It's designed to make us hate the villain, whatever it happens to be. But the more you go to that well, the less effective it is. Unless you're like a Game of Thrones type story where like part of the fun is just like who's going to die next. But for most traditional narratives, like if you kill off too many important characters at the same time, their deaths become diluted. So I'm kind of hoping that Luke makes it through this next one for that reason alone.
Yeah, I mean, so somehow they're going to have to handle the Princess Leia situation by writing her out of the story probably at some point. And obviously Luke appears to be kind of sidelined, either sidelined, because he's like in self-imposed retirement, or he's gay. He's not going to have any more little Jedi running around probably. So unless he adopts them, of course. But Rey isn't really a Jedi yet, right?
No, not. I mean,
she's not sensitive, right?
Right. Yeah, not in the sense of like becoming a trained Jedi.
So the only real Jedi right now that we know of is Luke. Right.
And you know how we know that, Jim?
How?
Because when Yoda died, he said, "Luke, when gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be?"
Well, there you go. There's your answer right there. Yoda said it, so that's it.
Maybe this movie will be, okay, get this, all right? Yoda says he's the last Jedi. So this movie is going to start off with them standing there holding the thing out, like the lightsaber scene at the end of Force Awakens. And then it'll just be a flashback and just be nothing but Luke Skywalker the entire movie. Right. Talking about what the last Jedi has been doing all these years. No, that won't happen. I know this is the story's moving forward, but
oh goodness.
Rey says, Mr. Skywalker, here's your lightsaber. Can you teach me how to be a Jedi? And he goes, "Fuck you, go away." Yoda said, I'm the last one. That's it. Bye.
Yoda didn't say anything about you, bitch. So step back.
Right.
Luke makes her sit on a rock and says, "All right, kids, this is how I met your mother." And then we go through 9 seasons, just trying to figure out what happened.
Call the water Uber and get out of here.
The water Uber.
Uber.
God. Wow. I mean, the Millennium Falcon's like right fucking there. Why can't you take the
that's true, yeah.
Hey, guys, before we get to our movie review, we just got a new picture from Paul Alderete, and he did what we told him. Check out that fabulous, sexy, furry chest of his.
Ooh, hold on a second.
Same pic, same angle, same handsome face. No t-shirt this time. Yeah.
This is why you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. So you are missing on some very sexy Paul Alderete, hairy chest and nipple action right now. So, wow. Well, Paul, my goodness, I don't know that I can get my mind back into the show at this point. Whew.
Gonna have
Let's take 5, guys. No,
we gotta talk Split. We got people waiting around to hear about Split.
We do indeed. So let's just say this up front. We're going to talk about Split, the new film by director M. Night Shyamalan, spoiler free for probably 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're split on whether you should see Split, we'll be happy to weigh in with some spoiler free advice, maybe help you come down in one camp or the other. But we'll give you a fair warning before we take you to Spoiler Town. All of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Split. All right, so Jim, give us the brief setup of this movie, and of course, spoiler free. Some initial thoughts, whether you think it's worth checking out in theaters, renting, skipping. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick synopsis that I get from IMDb. And here it is, and then we'll get into some of the details. No spoilers yet. It may be a very quick non-spoiler section because there's a lot to talk about spoiler-wise in this movie, and we don't want to short that. So anyway, 3 girls are kidnapped and held hostage by a man diagnosed with 23 distinct personalities, and the girls, try to escape before the apparent emergence of a frightful new 24th. So this one's directed, as we said up front in the show, and directed and written by M. Night Shyamalan. This is a name. This is one of those names that you hear, and almost everybody who watches movies knows who M. Night Shyamalan is, should be able to name one of his movies. We named most of them earlier in the show, but the most recent one was The Visit, which we kind of liked. I think we all liked that movie to a certain degree, if I remember right, and said, "Hey, we're excited to see what this guy does next because he might be back on a path of giving us good movies." And to tip my hand a little bit, I really love this movie. I think this one definitely solidifies him back on the right track. We'll talk about some of the reasons why. This one stars James McAvoy, who we know also as Professor Charles Xavier from the X-Men movies. Anya Taylor-Joy, who we've talked about last year in one of the movies in our top 10, The Witch. She played Thomason in that, probably the lead role. And those were the 2 primarily actors in this movie. There are other supporting actors. Haley Lou Richardson is one. I mentioned that I did like this movie. On the surface, it's just what the description said. It's a tense hostage drama thriller. But I also like that this movie is a film that has many layers that we will definitely peel back later in spoilers. But not only that, I think this movie is one of those movies where, you get to the end of a movie and a different light is shed on the movie at some point as you're watching it. And you get out of the movie and you say, you know what I need to do? I need to at some point go back and rewatch that movie because this new light may illuminate something about this movie that I may have missed, or the movie's just too clever to show it to me. So yeah, I would say this is a really good movie. James McAvoy is fantastic in this. He's got to juggle these personalities of the main character, and then with the exception of one scene that we'll talk about in spoilers, this was a lot of fun to watch him do. I definitely recommend this one you see this one and see it soon, and try not to read any spoilers. I mean, if you're listening to the show, I recommend not listening to spoilers and going to see this movie and then coming back and watching, because the less you know going into this movie, the more you're going to get out of it. Go see it.
All right, so we've got a big go see it from Jim. For me, I hate to go against you, Jim. I think whenever we're at a point where we potentially butt heads, we're coming at this from different sides. That can get a little weird since we live in the same house and have to interact with each other after the show. So it's probably a good thing that I really enjoyed this movie and don't have to go butting heads with you. Will was kind of talking
anymore.
Well, that was more like trying to fake out some of our listeners than you. I know better. We're engaged. If you don't know my tells by now, Jim, I think we'd have a problem. Right. But yeah, so this movie was good for me. And Will, you were kind of talking earlier about did The Visit maybe take us back to true M. Night Shyamalan form? I would say even more so, this movie kind of attempts to do that. This really feels like an early M. Night Shyamalan movie to me. And in fact, we went back and, we were just kind of catching up on the back catalog. Jim hadn't seen Unbreakable in a long time, and we were kind of like, well, let's just watch that one. And it was interesting how similar the feel kind of was between these two movies. So was glad to see that Split, maybe even more so, as a return to M. Night Shyamalan form. We may talk a little bit more about that later. I just want to let me put a hat on. I just want to take my hat off to Anya Taylor-Joy because, man, after seeing her in The Witch, I was like, I love this lady. She's awesome. I can't wait to see her in something else great. And then we get her in Split, and holy crap, she was fantastic. I thought she was so, so good. And of course, James McAvoy, big fan of his. Although I had an embarrassing moment in the car with Jim yesterday. My brain fused Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy into James Fassbender. And Jim's like trying to tell me, that I have the actor name wrong.
Fassbender? What are you talking about?
And I'm like, oh, right. Because Professor X and Magneto are like two sides of the same coin. And they blur together. Yeah. I guess now, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender. So in any event, James McAvoy, if you had listening devices in our car and took offense that I mixed up your name, it came from a good place. Honest, promise. I also want to give a shout out to Betty Buckley, who plays a therapist in this movie. Haven't seen her in a while. Nice to see you again, Betty. And I thought she did a really great job of playing a well-meaning therapist who maybe, has too much to contend with one of her patients. So I think, the other girls in the movie, I don't know. They didn't really even much of an impression on me, if any. But the big three in this film I thought were great, especially considering that, the main character is believably pulling off all these other characters too, right? All these other personalities. And, before we go into spoilers, I just want to say when he changed personalities, and I've seen so many episodes of Law and Order dealing with multiple personality disorder and never bought it. But when James McAvoy changes personalities, I felt like he was a different person. Like that felt real to me. Like how he could go from like brutal, cold, murdery type guy to like, well, let me clutch my pearls a little bit and tell you what's going to happen. Like that that transition was so like believable, I guess. So I got to give mad props to James McAvoy, but also probably some direction from M. Night Shyamalan there as well. So I think it all comes together to craft a pretty awesome film. So that's two big recommends. Will, it is now your job to weigh in. Are you going to break the chain or add a link to it?
Well, before I even talk about the movie, I've got a question for Jim. And when you're doing the editing, Jim, can you isolate that when Brad said let me clutch my pearls, because we need that audio drop. Like that's that's perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll put that in a special archive for later.
So guys, I am so excited that we're doing this episode. Like I love talking movies with you guys all the time. I love that. But so last year at Fantastic Fest, Split was actually our secret screening. We were the first audience in the world that got to see it. I was the front row, like 10 feet away. Like I could reach out and touch McAvoy and Shyamalan from where I was sitting. It was right there. And right afterwards, they swore the entire audience to secrecy, that they would not talk about anything that happened in this movie. Because as you know, Shyamalan movies are all about like big reveals. That's not a spoiler to say that Shyamalan movies are about big reveals. And so I've been sitting on this. I've been wanting to talk about this with people for months, and I can't. Now I can. Thank you. So that's my just getting that out of the way. I'm so happy that we're doing this right now. And for me, like Jim, the visit, like both of you, the visit was an uptick. Like it was a move back to form. And I think this is Shyamalan at at full fighting force. Like this is as good as those first two movies, The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. It made me fall in love with him as a filmmaker to begin with. Part of that is because, and Shyamalan in his Q&As and stuff would even say this, like, he's the type of filmmaker who probably did a worse job once he had more money. He didn't have hungry, scrappy people around him working with him on these films. He had unlimited amounts of monies to make these movies, and he didn't get to take the risks that he wanted to. And this is what we're seeing, is we're seeing a filmmaker who's taking a risk again. This is a B movie, but that isn't a problem. Like, it is a film that knows how and why a B movie is supposed to work, embraces the correct things properly. This whole film is about but we'll talk more in the spoiler section, obviously. But there's from the trailer alone, it's someone who's abducted by someone with split personalities, and that is a very B plot. But he does it expertly. McAvoy puts on a clinic here. None of the personalities is necessarily something that we haven't seen before, but they're all executed in just these completely believable ways. Like, McAvoy turns in like 5 or 6 of the best performances of the year already in one movie. Not to be outdone is Anya Taylor-Joy. She was in The Witch. She was brilliant in that. She was in Morgan, and she was the best part of that movie, even though one that I think we were super excited about. But she did a fantastic job with some very weighty material here. Another thing that I think is important to talk about, and I mentioned this when I was talking about him working with kind of young and up and comers, the way he did when he first started making some of his films. He assembled almost like like an Avengers team of like young, scrappy people to help on his film. The cinematographer is this dude named Mike Giolakis. This is a guy who does not have a lot of films under his belt, but he was the cinematographer for It Follows, which is, I think, one of the most interestingly shot movies that we've seen in some time. He also assembled here Westill and Thordson to do the composition, the music. And this is a guy with, save for a few documentaries and shorts, doesn't have a ton of soundtracks under his credits, but he does have, I don't know if you guys watched the Jinx, the miniseries. It's the guy that scored that. So really good score. So what I like so much is this is Shyamalan like saying, I don't have as much movie. He's working with Blumhouse, and Blumhouse is intentionally saying, Shyamalan, you can't have hundreds of millions of dollars. You've got a much more limited budget. Make it work. And it brings us back to that younger Shyamalan director from way back when, where he had to make it work with a lot less. I love this movie. I love the twists. I love the performances. I love the story. And I love that we're going to be talking about it in full detail. Squee, squee, squee.
See, Jim, people do squee. It is a thing. I'm not alone.
That's awesome. Hey, I definitely agree with what you said, Will, about like having a lower budget seems to make more creative friction, you know what I mean, and tension, and probably forces him to think outside his comfortable box, which gives us some spark to the movie. And the last two have had that. And Blumhouse, man, they're killing it. Like, I don't know what it is with those guys, but they're kings at taking low budget films that make a ton of money compared to the budget. Now, this isn't going to make money, but when you're talking about making somewhere north of 75, 80, $100 million against a budget that's less than 10, you're ranking in some major money. So Blumhouse and A24 are the studios right now that are making great films, and it's good to see him. I hope he continues to make more movies, smaller budget movies like this to give us something good.
Yeah, I think it forces him to work more with like his own brain and story mechanics and less with like, crazy visuals. You know what I mean? Like the strength of it really has to be on the mechanics. So I like that. Hey, before we get into spoilers, I want to catch up with a couple live comments that we got. We sort of gave a window at the beginning of the show so people could write in before we got to this discussion. We've got a couple to share. So we've got one from Adrian Charlie, longtime friend of the show from the Green Screen of Death podcast, who says, I was an M. Night apologist for the longest time, but with The Visit and Split, I'm hopeful for his future. I'm looking forward to whatever he does next. I wept at the end of The Visit because it felt like that was the M. Night I loved at the beginning of his career. So at this point, now that we're talking about Split, just real quick, Will, you said that this is kind of a return to form for him, you think? Is that right?
Absolutely. Whereas I think The Visit I would put in kind of like in his mid-tier. Like, I liked it,
Okay.
but, I feel like this is right up there. Maybe I think Unbreakable is still my favorite, but this is probably up there with Sixth Sense for my second favorite. And that's
Okay.
a hell of a good place for this film.
So, Jim, what about you then?
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is, I'd put this up against any studio movie. I mean, even mid-level M. Night is better than 90% of the stuff out there. So, there's no doubt in my mind that he's returned to form. Adrian said he kind of wept at the end of The Visit. Now I'm gonna have to listen to the Green Screens review of this movie.
Yes.
To see
Find out how many cats he used to wipe his tears on that one.
Right. Adrian and I are both criers. He's just not ashamed to admit it. So it's interesting to hear which movies Adrian cries at, and I do too.
That's so interesting, like guys and their masculinity and crying at movies. Like, I like to think that I'm a big old feeler. I'm very in touch with my feelings. I'm super empathetic. That's why watching A Dog's Purpose trailer, before the animal torture story, made me bawl. But I'm always thankful at the end of like a movie that's emotional. Like we just saw 20th Century Women, for like that 5 or 10 seconds of like total black before they start rolling the credits, because that's my time when everyone's blind to like wipe away my tears and look like I wasn't crying.
Yep.
When I was totally bawling a second earlier. So.
Yeah. We'll talk about that one a little bit more, maybe later.
Perhaps. So big M. Night Shyamalan return to form for me as well. M. Night is back, baby. What? Woo! Ow.
And it feels like we're not the only ones who think that too. Like you mentioned budget numbers for whatever budget's worth. This film I think had a budget of like $5 million. It's made 40. So like it's made back 8 times its money already. Like and again, it's not billions of dollar box office. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be good, and it needs to compel its base, and it's doing that.
There was a time when his name was thought. I mean, was kind of a joke. I mean, it was a laughing stock when we were talking about movies. You're talking about M. Night Shyamalan. People would roll their eyes. I mean, after the Happening and The Last Airbender,
After Earth, all those.
After Earth, people would roll their eyes and be like, "Oh God, this guy's still making movies." I was never. First of all, I didn't see The Last Airbender yet. I saw The Happening. It wasn't good, but it didn't seem like a career-damaging thing to me. Like it didn't. I knew the guy still had the chops. It was just a matter of him getting it back to basics and doing it. And with the last 2 movies, he's definitely done that.
He has. Although I would say not everybody agrees with us. We've got another live comment here from longtime fan of the show, Francisco Salgado, who says, "Hi, Movie Bears. I think M. Night Shyamalan has great ideas that most of the time falls flat on their faces. Lady in the Water was definitely the movie I remember letting me down big time, but I keep hoping for that Sixth Sense feeling again. Split was definitely not it."
Well, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle too, because I think the thing that was so magical about The Sixth Sense was it took us by surprise. Like this filmmaker and that twist and all of that came out of nowhere. That surprised all of us. And to a certain degree, I totally get that. Like, it's really hard to recapture that lightning again, to get that feeling back of like just new and discovery. For me, it's like I kind of be able to look past that and just look at like how well is he able to tell this individual story. But I totally get that sensation.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't wait till we talk about twists.
Well, I think now is a good point to go ahead and go into spoilers so that we can talk more freely about this movie. But before we do that, so super big positive recommends from all three of us here at the Movie Bros podcast. If you are on the fence about Split, maybe that will help push you over. Definitely go out, check it out, and give Blumhouse, A24, and M. Night Shyamalan your money. Definitely worth it. His name is a twist, you guys. Literally, it's a twist of the tongue to say his name. Anyway, so spoilers, totally fair game. We'll give listeners a few more seconds to bow out, get the fuck out if they don't want to be spoiled on Split. Okay, you've had enough time, I feel. Do you guys want to jump right to the twist at the end, or is there something you want to talk about first?
I think we should talk about it, but set it up. I think we need to set it up before we just dive in. Like, explain what it is.
There's kind of two twists to this movie, like all things considered. There's the twist to the actual story itself that kind of sets up the climax, and then there's the kind of the big reveal at the very, very end. And I think we need to talk about those two twists in order, if that makes sense.
Will, why don't you tell us about the two twists? Because I gotta say that people, when they talk about this movie and the big twist at the end, I may fly in the face of general opinion, but I don't really think that's necessarily a twist, because I have in my mind what a twist does in a story, and I don't think this does that. But
right, so
that's debatable. It's debatable.
So I think the first twist for me is really so this is a movie about like psychological illness, right? Like this person who is, he's been seeing this psychiatrist. He's abducted these girls, and he's going through these personalities. And there's a certain element of this movie, at least for me, where I couldn't quite peg this character's threat level. Like there were times where I thought, well, I mean, obviously he's not well, but like maybe nothing bad is going to happen. Like maybe not too bad, or maybe it'll be more accidental. But they keep referring to this beast. They keep referring to the beast as going to be one of the personalities, and that's going to come out. And at a certain point in this movie, like it sort of flips. The climax kicks in, and the last personality actually has super strength and all of these animalistic like characteristics. Like, like he's able to like kind of
body transformation.
Yeah, he's able to like kind of break open things that like a normal human being can't. He's able to scale walls, and he like is eating the organs of these girls. And it's like, to a certain degree, like that's not the movie that the first 2/3 of this movie was. Like it goes into a completely different territory. So that when I talk about the twist, like that's the first thing I talk about, because that is a tonal shift. That would be twist enough. I like that. And that's, I mentioned before that there's like a B element to this. And I think it's because it's a traditional thriller that switches into science fiction territory. Not unlike something like, something where the kind of the sci-fi elements are just sort of like sitting at the edges of it. 10 Cloverfield Lane, like when we were watching that, like you don't know quite what's going on. Is there this plague? What's going on outside? It's this isolated story with this kind of larger ramifications. You get the same thing here. Was that, I guess we'll talk about the reveal of the end here in a second, but I want to know, Jim, was that part compelling to you? Like, did you like the beast?
I did. It was, you're right, Will. It was kind of a turning point in the movie, even though the movie told you the whole time, right in front of your face, there's going to be a beast, and he does this, and he's coming, it's going to happen. But the whole movie, you're thinking, oh, this guy has DID, dissociative identity disorder. He's just making this stuff up in his mind, right? So it's not really a threat. It's just he's a very troubled individual with this personality disorder. We don't see any hard evidence of the beast. We just hear him talking about it, or his personalities talking about it. So when that happens, you're like, oh shit, this is really happening. This is now a freaking monster movie at the very least, right? This is now we're dealing with a monster, and it's jumped up into more of a monster / science fiction movie at that point. So yeah, it's a turning point. It changes the tone of the movie, I guess you could call that a twist, but it doesn't came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like the twist is that they went for it. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, they tell you all through the movie this is going to happen, but I think they also do a really good job of like setting up the doubt. Like, hearing the psychiatrist like talking, seeing the videos of his him going through all these personalities. I think there's enough doubt all the way through here. Like, you just think like, oh, maybe it's another personality, but it's not going to be something too crazy or too special. And I think the twist is that it gave you exactly what it presented.
Right.
It's like when you watch it. It's like when you watch a magician, like a really good, like sleight of hand stage magician type guy who says, here in a moment, I'm going to make this card disappear. And you watch intently, like you're watching those cards and then all of a sudden it's gone. Like, there's some magic that happened there, even though you're watching for it and he told you it was going to happen. It still takes you by surprise when it does happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the magician thing, right? I'm going to cut this girl in half, and you see him do the illusion, and then he opens the box, and guess what? He did actually fucking cut the girl in half. So it's gone.
Like, oh my god, how did that happen?
It's gone from a magic trick to a fucking slaughterhouse. So it's changed. So that's the twist, right? I told you what I'm going to do, and now I actually did it. So that's the twist. I get exactly what you're saying there. But let's talk about what people are calling the big twist. You want to set that one up, Will?
Yeah. Who wants to set this one up?
Brad, do you want to talk about that one?
I will totally set this up. So the big twist in this movie, after James McAvoy's character has escaped, Anya Taylor-Joy escaped with her life, we discover, of course, that the dissociative identity disorder character's still on the loose. There's a manhunt, and we're in a diner, and they're watching on TV, talking about how he's still on the loose. And one girl says, "Oh my gosh, this is just like that guy in the wheelchair 15 years ago. Who was that?" And then she leans back. Bruce Willis leans forward, and he's like, "His name was Mr. Glass." Cut to credits.
And everybody's like, whoa, what the hell is that?
And that's exactly the reaction that I had, mind blown, because it sets this movie directly in the same like movie universe as Unbreakable, which is the whole reason I couldn't say it earlier, but it's the whole reason we went back and watched Unbreakable again. And I don't know, I've kind of been wondering if we'd ever get an Unbreakable sequel. And now I'm like, well, A, is this a sequel? Or B, is this sort of planting the seed and a sequel may be coming? And I think that's why people are kind of losing their shit right now, because Unbreakable is a much beloved movie. Will, I mean, what was your reaction?
So my reaction, first of all, I'm in this festival audience, and the one thing that they did a really good job of when they introduced this was they dropped no clues whatsoever. One, what we were about to watch, or two, so we didn't even know it was going to be the new Shyamalan movie until the name appeared. And they obviously gave us, because of that, no heads up of what happened. So I'm with this crowd of just hardcore, film fanatics. And when that moment happens, we didn't catch the last couple of things that he said because people were standing up and fucking cheering at the screen. And I was part of that enthusiasm. It is incredibly exciting to not only see a good film, we like the movie, we all three of us like this movie, right? But also to now find that it ties into what at least I consider, and I think a good number of people, I don't think this is a rare opinion, it ties into one of this filmmaker's other better films. Whether or not this means there's going to be another one after this, Shyamalan was kind of hinting at there was already, he's been kind of playing around with the script that involved such a thing. And that was exciting to know. I would be interested in seeing that. I've always said Unbreakable was a movie that is overlooked a lot because it was way ahead of its time. It lampooned superhero movies before superhero movies were really the norm. I think if Unbreakable came out right now, it would go over like gangbusters. So yeah, I'm over the moon at this. Whether we see an actual another one or not, I'd love to. But even without, I still like this link. I like this connective tissue.
Funny story, Will. So, funny story, and then I have a question for you. So, we're watching this movie, and we get to that last 30 seconds of the movie where that diner scene kicks in. And all of a sudden, I'm watching the movie, and I actually like the ending of the film without that. I thought the movie ended really well without that. It was very ominous. Some of the shots they showed of like the statue of the lion over the wildebeest or whatever, I thought that was awesome. And them coming out, you're finding out that it all happened in a zoo, and all the clues that the movie put throughout, where you could maybe figure that out if you went back and watched it, I just thought was brilliant. But then they dropped this thing in, and they what's his name? Bruce Willis leans forward and says, "Mr. Glass," and I'm like, So now, the first thing that popped into my head was, what's the dead guy from The Sixth Sense doing in this movie? because I had seen Unbreakable, but it didn't really make as huge an impression on me as The Sixth Sense did. And I remember, I barely remember that it was Bruce Willis in that movie. It didn't make, and I hadn't been kind of privy to all the talk about, oh my God, I hope we make an Unbreakable sequel, blah, 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 blah. And so when I see Bruce Willis, I'm like, that's interesting. He put the dead guy from The Sixth Sense in his movie. And then Brad had to tell me, like, no, that's the guy from Unbreakable. I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But
you just watched a superhero movie. Fuck.
I know, exactly, right? A superhero movie did not make an impression on me. Go figure. So other people have said that they knew even before that moment because they were playing the Unbreakable movie theme over that scene before Bruce Willis even appeared. And when the first few bars of that theme came up, they were like, what's going to happen? And boom, there it was. And I think that led to some of those people, like you said, jumping up and screaming. But the question I have was that scene actually at the end of the movie for you, or was it after the credits? Because another friend of ours, Adrian, had said, hey, if you're going to go watch Split, make sure you stay to the end of the credits. So we did, thinking there was something else, and there was nothing.
Yeah, I believe, and gosh, I'm not 100% sure now that I hear it both ways. It's been like 4 months at this point. I believe it was at the end of the credits, or at least cut into the credits, because I remember like the audience had already done. It's like, oh, the movie is over, clap, and then something comes up on the screen, and everyone's like, oh, so. Which wouldn't happen if the movie just happened as a coda.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There was this weird, like, about a week or so after we screened it in September, one of the random news sites that I followed on Twitter, I couldn't tell you the name of it, but it was a film review site. They actually did reviews of the different movies, as one does at a festival. And the headline for that one was the unofficial Unbreakable sequel premieres at Fantastic Fest. And they just got slammed really fucking hard for like putting the obvious like spoiler right in the height. And then they went back and they changed it. And I'm so glad they changed it really quick. But I was still worried that like, again, I wanted to talk about this with you guys. I was like, oh God, please Brad and Jim don't see it. Please Brad and Jim don't see it. Or it was like a 10-minute window. It was like super thin, but at the same time, I was just like, biting my fingernails the whole time. Like, oh my God, how could you fucking do this? So movie where Bruce Willis is a ghost is out. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah. So I have a question about the connection between these two movies. So we went back and watched Unbreakable last night, and Split makes a huge point out of, your body changing its chemistry and becoming, whatever you think you are, right? So if this beast personality comes out and thinks it's a beast that's super tough and can climb and whatever, that's what he becomes, right? So my question is, in Unbreakable, was Bruce Willis really unbreakable the whole time, or did Mr. Glass create unbreakable Bruce Willis by putting in his head that he could do limitless things with his strength and his body, and so Bruce Willis's body chemistry adapted to make it true?
That's a good question, and I think you could probably argue the latter fact. I mean, certainly, like, spoilers for Unbreakable. Right. there were all of these different train crashes that were caused specifically to find this one person who would be a sole survivor. And that's how Bruce Willis's character was originally like tapped by Mr. Glass to be this guy, you know? So even before like the idea had been planted in the David Dunn character's head, he had survived this train crash without like a scratch on him. So it sort of does become like a chicken and the egg type thing. Was he already unbreakable before the idea was planted in his head? Or maybe he already had the kind of the core components to be that way, and then the things that, you know, Glass does to kind of train him and build him on his way is what allows him to kind of like further develop that, to develop all that super strength and stuff that he develops. So, you know, maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, or maybe it's even a combination of the two.
So is where Unbreakable was a hero origin story. The whole movie, well, it's a hero and a supervillain origin story, really, together, right? Because you have Mr. Glass and you have Dunn, the Unbreakable guy, right? Which is
David Dunn, the Sentry or Sentinel, whatever he had on his side.
Yeah. And then this movie is kind of another villain origin story, but we don't know that. We really don't know that until that last 30 seconds. We think it's just another thriller. This guy has some kind of power where he can transform his body from his personality. That's great. I don't see the connection, though, between Mr. Glass and this villain.
I don't think there has to be a connection between the two. I think Mr. Glass just was, you know, Mr. Glass was the counterpart to Dunn, and so they were kind of tied to each other. I think this is a separate supervillain, you know, now that we know what it is, kind of in his own origin story. And like the idea here, it's like, oh, he'll probably clash with our established hero. It's really interesting, though, that there's even some philosophy that comes into play here. If you think about it, the only thing that turned this into a supervillain origin story was the presence of a superhero. Right. Like, and so before that, it's just a monster movie. So it's interesting. You know, a supervillain has to have a superhero. I like kind of like wrapping my brain around that thought too.
Yeah. So then my last question becomes, and I know we've got to wrap here shortly, but who would win? Let's say we get a true Unbreakable sequel. Who would win in a fight? Mr. Unbreakable himself, David Dunn, or the Beast personality from Kevin?
The hero always wins, right? Like, but it wouldn't be easy. Like, his last villain was a mentalist, like a smart guy, like the schemer guy. But now he has to fight someone who's like a physical guy. So hero always wins. David Dunn wins, right? I would
especially with the help of Cutter Girl. You know what I mean? Like, she's going to be able to help him out, right? Because those scars were her cuttings, or were they scars from her abusive uncle?
I think it was her cutting herself.
Cutting herself because of the sexual
trauma
abuse
of the trauma
that she experienced as a child. Like, which is a whole other. Go ahead.
I just feel so conflicted about that because it was so hot seeing him mostly naked, but it was so creepy seeing him trying to entice a little girl to come over and you know, do physical things to him. Like, that was a crazy, uncomfortable moment for me.
That was a very, very disturbing scene. I thought that whole abuse scene was very, very, I think it was well handled in the movie. I think it got its intended reaction from the audience, at least from me. Like, I was seriously creeped out by that scene. Because you have this guy, he seems like he's a cool uncle. You know, he's obviously really close to the girl and her dad. And then he's hiding behind rocks, like stripped down to his underwear, like luring this girl in. That was really, really disturbing to me.
And it's hard too, because I think one of the themes that the movie kind of settles on at the end is like the only reason she was able to survive is because she had endured this abuse. And it's like you can look at that same scene from two different angles. And I myself am sometimes conflicted about it, just thinking about it. Just like, on one hand, it's like, you know, she's experienced this trauma and she's stronger for it. And I think that's the way the film wanted to portray it. But I think there's also a way of looking at it that's a little more uncomfortable, which is like, that the only reason she survived was because of that abuse. That abuse changed her into something that was in some way like less human and less desirable to the monster in that particular way. Again, that's not what they were going for, but they tap danced on a very, very fine line. I think they did so effectively, but I did have to like do a lot of thinking afterwards, just like, God, this is complicated content. Like, did they handle it well? And I come down on the side that they did.
Would it have been better or worse if at the end, in that moment where he sees her scars, that Kelly Clarkson Stronger song started up in the background and Anya Taylor-Joy started like punching the air?
That would have been worse. That would have been objectively worse.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, I mean, this movie was good. I don't think it was perfect. I didn't like the way it left a big hole with her name is Claire in the movie? I forget what her name is, the girl. Joy's character. They never really resolved her story. I mean, she's rescued. She's saved by the fact that the Beast sees something in her that he sees in himself, which is that she is one of the imperfect. I forget what they called it, but she's saved by that. But at the end, she's in a police car and they say, "Oh, we're going to turn you back over to your uncle," and she just gives that look.
Like she's
story at that
going
point
from one monster to another, and that's, I think, kind of the feeling they were supposed to leave us with. But yeah, it's an uncomfortable ending.
Unless, because the words were your guardian, not your uncle. So maybe in the intervening years, Bruce Willis bumped into her uncle, got a flash of like the bad shit he was doing, took him out, and became her new guardian.
As much as I'd love to believe that, like, there's a bunch of scenes earlier, like at the very beginning of the movie, before the girls get in the, the car with the father of one of them, where she's like, basically like indicating what she doesn't want to go home, and she's just like really aloof about a lot of those things. So it's like they're even like going back and rewatching it, like, and I haven't rewatched it yet, and I need to, but there's a lot of stuff at the very beginning of the movie that I feel like is more contextualized by kind of realizing the stuff that's been in her past.
What if we went back and in that early scene on the way to the car, we saw her actually brush against Mr. Glass? Would that be? I'm not Mr. Glass, but brush against David Dunn. Yeah, would that be awesome or what? Because then you could say he totally picked up on her abuse, and
so maybe
was able to
move in and help her out later on, or maybe. Yeah. The thing that she's experienced from all of this is, here's another way of kind of bright siding it. Like, she's just defeated a monster, so to speak. She didn't defeat it as much as she, was able to survive it. Maybe she's got some additional like gas in her tank to like go home and kind of fight the other monster at home. Like, I feel like that's kind of the brighter side of looking at it, as opposed to just like, oh shit, she's going back to hell.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's so many things we could discuss about, this thing at the end. I still hesitate to call it a twist because, to me, it doesn't change what the main movie was. And fine, it's semantics at this point. It's a twist because it's a big shocking reveal at the end of the movie. It kind of changes the way you look at the movie, but it doesn't change anything that really happened in the movie. So. Yeah, I think this is going to be great. I mean, he's come out since, and I don't have the quote, but he's actually said, yeah, I've been thinking about making this Unbroken sequel for a long time, Unbreakable sequel, and he's definitely gonna make another movie. I hope hope we see that soon, and I can't wait. It's going to be fun.
Indeed. All right. Well, guys, we are at that point of the show where we begin to wrap things up by talking about some plugs, which are, of course, things that we're interested in, that we think our listeners should be interested in as well. Jim, I have a feeling that I think I know what your plug is, so I will not steal your plug. Instead, Moana, the sing-along version, is coming to theaters this weekend. I'm not clear on if it's only in theaters on the 27th, if it's a one-night only event, or if it's like a week-long showing or something. I was doing some research, and our local theater doesn't have times up for it yet, so I don't know. So if you want to sing along to Moana in a theater full of other people singing along, A, don't go by yourself because that's creepy. And B, you may want to see this on the 27th, just in case it's the only night that it's sticking around. But that is the Moana sing-along. I will say, if you haven't seen Moana yet, it'd be a little like going to Catholic church and not knowing all the shit that they're reciting. You probably don't want to see the sing-along version as your like first exposure to Moana. Just pro tip there. Like the annoyance of hearing other people sing when you're not an annoying person singing probably will take it down.
Especially if you're sitting behind Brad, because I 100% imagine Brad standing up and just singing his fucking lungs out, just like dancing in the aisle. Like, you know, it's just like, come on, I'm trying to watch the movie, Brad. Stop singing over it. It's like, no, this is the sing-along. I'm going to sing along.
I am going to like be in that theater and I'm going to like whip my shirt off and I'm going to have like Sharpie tattoos like all over my body. Like during thank you, I'll just like point to different ones. That would work, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that would be perfect. Yeah, do it.
Anyway,
that
so that's
get you into the theater.
Not at all. Anyway, so the Moana sing along in theaters, maybe one night only, January 27th, possibly longer than that. I don't know. Check your local movie times. Will, what have you got this week for plugs?
So I have a feeling that the thing that I wanted to plug this week is the same thing that Jim wants to plug this week. So I'm going to shift to something else. And is it one that you guys both just watched over the weekend?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to switch over to something else, but I'm going to jump on with you when you plug it. That way you can still plug it.
I'll let you jump on me anytime.
Oh, hey now. So my backup plug for this week is going to be a movie that is it's another one I saw on the festival circuit that has been kind of sitting around, not out there for most people. It is now in limited release. I don't know how wide it's going to go, and it's an animated movie called The Red Turtle. This is a movie by Studio Ghibli helped work on it with a filmmaker from, I believe, from the Netherlands, Michael Dudok de Wit. And it's this movie with no dialogue at all, and it's just this castaway on this deserted island. He's trying to eke out a living there, and he comes across this red turtle, because that's the name of the movie, and it's all about kind of that interaction, the things that interaction spawns, and the life that this man builds on this island. And it is absolutely stunning. It is absolutely heart-wrenching, and it's done without a single word of dialogue. So it's in limited, it just hit limited this weekend, which means limited here in the US. But I think it's only a few screens. I hope it expands. It's hard to tell with these foreign animation films, though. They don't always get the traction they should. But The Red Turtle, super cool. If it's playing near you, check it out.
Well, I'm really sorry, but I giggle every time you say The Red Turtle because it makes me think of Chubb events.
We'll have to talk off air. I've not been to a Chubb event, so talk off air. You'll have to fill me in on that one.
Oh goodness,
that's the ginger turtle you're thinking of.
The ginger turtle. Gotcha. All right. Well, Jim, why don't you go ahead and close us out for plugs? What have you got this week?
Yeah, you guys both know what I'm going to plug. It's a film we saw this weekend. Finally, I've been waiting for this one to come out. It's called 20th Century Women. It's a movie by writer and director Mike Mills, who gave us a movie called oh God, help me out here, guys.
Beginners.
Beginners, right? Which was Christopher Plummer coming out late in life. Really beautiful character study movie. This is similar. This movie is about what you could say is kind of like an unconventional family. It's really a coming of age movie because it centers around the maturing of the son, not the only male in the movie, but one of the only two males in the movie. And he's being raised by this mom with the help of some friends. Just a really, really great coming of age, sweet, character driven. It's not a plot driven movie. There's no kidnapping of 3 girls and held hostage by a superhero. This is this is just a really great movie. Just kind of let it wash over me. I mean, I grew up in the 70s where this movie was made, and this movie really captured that time. Annette Bening plays the mom in this movie, and she's fantastic. I also want to give a shout out. Of course, Greta Gerwig is also in this movie. She's great. To me, the standout, and this is an actress, maybe I haven't given her due, but Elle Fanning, I thought in this movie was great. To me, she was right up there with Annette Bening. Just a great movie. The way, again, it captured kind of that late 70s vibe. It kind of shows how, made me think of my own family a little bit, even though I wasn't really brought up in a family like this. My mom shared some of the same qualities as Annette Bening has. And that, we talked about crying during movies. I didn't cry at the end of this movie. I was kind of like mini crying all the way throughout this movie. There were just a lot of little moments that really resonated with me. It's called 20th Century Women. I hope this movie builds some momentum because it's definitely worth going out to see. I'm not sure if it's for everybody. Like I said, it's one of those movies where people are going to walk out and say, oh, nothing happened in this movie. Well, stuff does happen. It's all character development and how characters interrelate to each other. And there are character arcs in this movie if you look for them. 20th Century Women, I loved it.
Yeah, Jim, definitely a great pick. Will and I both almost made it our plugs, but we forwent that, guessing that you were going there. So obviously co-signed. Annette Bening, I adore her so much. My love affair with Annette Bening started in The American President and has continued to this day. So was very happy to see her in this movie. I think it's very, very strong. Definitely hits you in the feels. I would even say it might end up somewhere on my top 10 list if we hadn't already done a top 10 list. So can we count it for 2017 since technically speaking?
Well, if we didn't count it for 2016, I'm going to make sure it would be considered for 2017 on my list.
I think it's right on that line. And I was actually talking with Adrian Charlie. We were both debating because they did their top 10 list, Green Screen of Death, around the same time we did ours, and we were both debating The Red Turtle. And it was one of those movies that falls right on that line, and he considered it for 2016. I'm considering it for 2017. Same thing here. I think you can make the case either way, as long as you back it up. Like, hey, I like this movie. It counts. Being this like delightful film for me. I had some friends down. My friends Bill and Chris from San Antonio actually came to visit me, and we did the Pride rally in Austin. Lots of marches this weekend. And my friend Bill's New Year's resolution, he said, it's like I want to see more movies. Like I see the big tent poles, but you talk about movies. I want to come see more movies with you. And so I said, great. I've been hearing a lot about this one. Let's go see it. And Bill, Chris, my boyfriend Scott, myself, all through the movie, just laughter and tears and more laughter and more tears. Like we were having this joint experience together with what's on screen, and then we found ourselves just all through the rest of the weekend, just hey, you know what? I really liked this scene. Whether it be just Annette Bening's just like natural charisma, Greta Gerwig, who by the way is my best friend, and I love her forever. She's not really.
Get her on the show, Will. Get her on the show.
She's not really my best friend. I'm just putting it out in the universe. I'm putting it out in the universe so that maybe it'll happen. But I love her. And Elle Fanning, who, like you mentioned, fantastic year between this and even though I didn't like the movie a whole lot, I think her performance in Neon Demon was just absolutely stunning. I love 20th Century Women. It would have made my top 10 for 2016. Probably would have made my top 5 for 2016.
Wow. Well, Will, your hotel Wi-Fi is beginning to degrade your signal quite a bit. So I think the hotel is telling us it is time to wrap things up.
Sorry, I was downloading the porn.
That's all right. You're in room 208, so you get the porn bandwidth allotment. Hey, real quick, we literally just got like the most last second listener mail ever, but we're glad for it. Longtime fan of the show, Gary McCoy says, "Hi, Movie Bears. I was curious if there are any upcoming movies you're really looking forward to seeing." So, real quick, if you could only pick one movie coming out this year, right on the tip of your tongue, Jim, which one are you looking forward to seeing?
Let me see. I am going to say, oh boy, this is a hard one. I'm going to say there's a movie called Call Me by My Name that has come out recently. And I'm not exactly sure who stars in it, but I've heard a lot of great buzz about it. It's gay themed, has a gay love storyline in it. People are calling it a masterpiece already. So I know I don't like to put a lot of stock in what other people say, but when the praise is that high, that quick for it, it's something that's got my attention.
All right. Excellent. And Will, how about you?
Yeah, that one's going over really well at Sundance. I'm hearing a lot of it's the next Moonlight, which is good. But for me, Blade Runner 2049. Denis Villeneuve is my favorite contemporary director. I love the original Blade Runner. I love this trailer. So give me Blade Runner 2049.
All right. And for me, it's got to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 coming out on May 5th. I think, obviously, we're all agreed Star Wars Episode 8, so we talked about it for an hour earlier. We didn't need to bring it up again. But Guardians of the Galaxy 2, bring on some Star-Lord, some Groot, some Rocket Raccoon. I'm all over it. I need a new Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack to fuel my drives. So let's see what Volume 2 has in store. Hey, we are out for the week, everyone. Thanks so much for listening live, joining in on the YouTube live broadcast. We've appreciated hearing from you guys during the show, especially because we were getting sexy shirtless pics. Guys, I think we need like a sexy shirtless listener segment like every week. So maybe
shirtless pick of the week.
Yeah, shirtless pick. Let's do it. Shirtless pick. You heard it right here, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a new thing. Send your shirtless pictures to Brad at moviebearspodcast.com, Will or Jim at moviebearspodcast.com. If you want to be our shirtless pick of the week, well, you got to send us shirtless pics and, get on it. Anyway.
This just turned into the best hobby ever.
Right? Oh my goodness. In any event, next week, we're still figuring out what we're doing. You'll know when we go live next week. But don't forget, if you are only listening via iTunes or Stitcher, you are missing out on half the fun, like Paul Alderete's super sexy picture earlier. So go subscribe on YouTube if you're at your computer or a mobile device. Watch us do our thing, even if you can't watch live. There are sometimes some things you only get in the visual, so don't miss out. We'll see y'all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.